Let's go around saying your names just for the record.
I'm
Yeah,
Barry.
sure. Sorry. I'm Will. Yeah. Oh, just my name. Will Mahan. I'm a first-year student.
I'm Barry. I'm also a first-year student.
I'm supposed to.
I'm Eunice, and I'm a junior.
Okay, so just a little bit on how the debate will work. You'll be given a minute to respond to each question. I'll be timing, and you can use as much or as little of that time to answer the question as you'd like. When you have 10 seconds left, I'll put my hand up as a warning, and then once you go over, I'll just cut you off. You'll also have a minute and a half in the end to provide closing remarks. If we have time between the questions that we've already decided on and the closing remarks, we can move to some of the questions submitted by the public. It is 6:03, so we're aiming to end around 6:30, 6:35-ish. Okay, so the first question, let's do Will, Eunice, and then Barry. And the question is, have you had any prior experience with student council?
Yeah, so in terms of running for this office, I do not have formal legislative experience, and I do recognize that that's a very important part of council and how it functions. But what I do bring to the table is something new, executive experience. I've got the background of serving as a stage manager on the Rocky Horror Picture Show. We had one of the smallest budgets of any main stage theater production here at Clark, and we fostered some of the largest turnout. Over 200 people showed up. Not only that, but serving on the Environmental Action Committee, we were able to begin to put in place a rain garden expansion project. This is huge for Clark sustainability, but also for Worcester sustainability. And I think it's really important when we talk about experience that we do talk about legislative experience here tonight, but I also think it's important that we take a look on the flip side of the coin, executive experience. And I think that's what I bring to the table. So thank you very much.
Okay. Sorry, the next person can go ahead.
All right, hi everyone. So I'm Eunice, I use they, them pronouns. Previously on council, I've served as a two-term minority representative. So my first and second year, I was dedicated to reforming this representative position to what has now become the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet, consisting of 5 members of students who are dedicated to equity and justice on campus through various initiatives. I also served as the chair of the finance committee in my second year. Coming back, we had to basically oversee over $710,000 of the student activity fee. I was previously a member of that committee and then rose to become the chair of the committee to facilitate meetings and also make sure that we were safeguarding the SAF so that it would be accessible to as many clubs and organizations as possible. And then this year, serving as the vice president of student council, so continuing to oversee clubs and organizations from a much larger kind of scope, and also working with the rest of my team to carry out our various platforms and initiatives. So.
Okay, and Barry.
I myself, I have not been on the cabinet for any position in student council, but in high school, I was the head of a spirit club, spirit committee of my high school. I also was the head of Spark Tank, which is pretty much a group of people who watch and hear pitches from businesses ran by students, and we basically vote and decide how much money they are granted. And that was pretty large in my school, and I played a huge role in that. So as far as from leadership, I do have experience, although I haven't been exactly on the candidate seat.
Okay, thank you. This next question, let's start with Eunice first. Is there anything about the student council's internal mechanisms or external image that disturbs you in a provoking way?
I definitely think that in terms of how we've operated as a council, there are many areas that we could improve upon. I know that people will continuously have feedback for us regarding our individual representative committees. So whether that's student life, whether it's finance, grants, we see and work with students on a day-to-day basis, whether it's funding, whether it's transportation, and we're always working to better ourselves in all of these areas. But I think fundamentally there are issues that we do have to address in terms of transparency and making sure that our committees are working to the best of their ability to make sure that, you know, we are creating results and outcomes for students that meet their needs. And so I think that on the representative committee side, there is a lot of work to be done still. And this just has to do with the way institutionally it's been set up. You know, you're giving representatives a lot of responsibility and power for positions that, you know, they're not always compensated for their time and labor for. And there's a lot of invisible labor that comes with it. And so I think that on that front, that is a part that does disturb me, is how much our student leaders are demanded of their position.
Okay, let's have Barry go next, and then Will, you can go last this time.
I'm sorry, you cut out when you said the question. Can you repeat it?
Yeah, sure. Is there anything about Student Council's internal mechanisms or external image that disturbs you in a provoking way?
Although I've been at Clark for a couple months, nothing really has stood out to me that I did not like. Whenever I had a question or emailed anyone, they seemed to respond pretty fast. Other people in the community, such as TAs, I guess they are really helpful too. So nothing really has came upon that I've disliked.
Okay, and Will?
Yeah, so I think in terms of transparency, I think that the council, I think they did a great job with informing students about COVID-19 and the whole response to that. And I really applaud Eunice and the rest of the e-board for doing that. I think transparency is really important. I think that we're taking huge steps to address that. In terms of student council, if anything, I find troubling. I've only been here, like Barry, for a few months, but from what I've seen, I really like Clark. You know, it's definitely home to me, so I appreciate that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running, because I want to help build on what we already have, and I think that I bring a new voice and fresh perspective to this. So, yeah.
Okay. As president, what would be your biggest priority if elected, and what changes would you want to see implemented on Student Council? And let's have Barry go first this time.
Can you repeat the question?
As president, what would be your biggest priority if elected, and what changes would you want to see implemented on council?
One of my biggest changes would probably be the student involvement. I feel like we should have more campus activities that are pretty much open to everyone, and so not really like inclusive. There's a lot of clubs on campus, which is great. They have their individual activities or events, and I feel like if it was more of a community-based thing, more people would attend, and just the culture on Clark would be better. Also would like to have bistro delivery as another source for students to get paid or employed. It would definitely bring a new way of eating style or lifestyle, because most kids don't order on campus as far as from the bistro. So having that delivery would definitely change the culture in a positive way. People interact more with each other. Also, I would like to have Dana Commons, sort of like some improvements to that. I was told it used to be a soup kitchen or a canteen at one point. I think we should bring it back and open it up to the community and help those around us.
Okay, let's do Will and then Eunice.
Oh, yeah, so the question was, sorry.
I can repeat it.
So oh yeah, sure, thanks.
Okay, what would your biggest priority be if elected to the position of president, and what changes would you want to see implemented on student council?
Great, so I've got 3 main policies that I'm hoping to advocate for. They're all on my website, willforclark.webs.com. I've got the math, you can look it up. But my 3 main policies. I want to host a college formal. We've looked at many options for this, including the Tuckerman Hill venue, Tilton Hall, but I definitely want to do that because I've heard from a lot of students that we haven't had a formal in a long time that's on a massive scope, so I would hope to do that. Add food options to the dining hall. I think that we can definitely have more surveys, find out what students like, and yeah. And then in terms of my final one, we used to have a program called Cycles for Change. I remember coming here and touring and hearing about it, but the bike share program currently isn't functional, so I'd like to bring that back. I've got a few people in mind to talk to about being e-board members and restarting it. So I think that would be huge. And I really look forward to hopefully advocating for these 3 main policy points in the years to come.
And Eunice?
Thank you. So this is an extremely loaded question. And, you know, part of your job as president is to be able to provide leadership and guidance to not only members of the representative council, but also to the student body. The issues I think that I've seen that have been the most prominent, though I think that they do require a lot of student engagement and feedback on, because unfortunately due to the recent events, we haven't been able to do as wide of a depth of a listening tour as we would like to with students. But I think that the three right now that really jump out to me is affordability. How are you going to make sure that Clarkies can continue to come back next year and make sure that they can attend Clark and be able to accomplish all of the activities and aspirations that they want to, especially given the recent crisis that we've had in the economy and the implications of that is going to inevitably happen when we come back in the fall. Food justice, and I'm really glad that Barry, you brought up that Dana Commons used to be a canteen, and I think that Will also touched on this about just because we have access to a dining hall doesn't mean students have nutrition, right? So how are we going to expand those options? And lastly, accessibility is a big one. A lot of our buildings are not accessible to students, those who are differently abled and who have mobility issues. So thank you, and I think those are a lot of the three that I would consider as primary.
Some would say that one of council's biggest challenges is getting constituents involved. How would you address this issue? And let's go, Will, Eunice, Barry.
Yeah, so I think obviously with council, I would like to see more reach out to a lot of different groups, including the athletic community. You know, I'm a part of a Division III sport that sometimes gets overlooked, cross country, but so I feel like with that, swim and dive, let's reach out to them more. Intramural sports, obviously Quidditch and stuff, but I feel like definitely within the athletic community, we can do a lot more outreach. But also just in general, obviously with first years who may be trying to find a home here, I think it's really important that we reach out to them. But I think the council's done a great job at club fair, making sure that you know, they're constantly emailing. Our reps are doing a fantastic job fulfilling the community within different halls like Bullock and Wright and other halls for first years and non-first years alike. So I would say just building on that, obviously. And yeah, I think, but in particular, I would like to see more outreach to the athletic community. I think that would be huge.
So I love this question. Thank you again. I think that constituency involvement, as we've seen, has been, you know, a really core part of why student council is even successful, I think, in this regard. And I think a huge part of that is building relationships. In my time on student council, it is imperative that you build relationships with constituencies across different communities. And I think a huge part of that has to be that you are first and foremost listening to people's needs. You're showing up for their events, not just the events that you identify with yourself, but also events, whether that's the multicultural clubs and organizations, whether it's our environmental clubs, whether it's our social justice clubs. You know, there's so many different interests that Clarkies are, you know, really passionate about, and it's not a question of whether or not they want to be involved, because once you give them something to care about, they show up. And we've seen that, especially in the recent events, that they will show up for each other. And just because you're not necessarily in a leadership position, or even if you are, you know, we've seen time and time again that people will rise to the occasion and be there for their community. So I think constituency involvement really does come back down to building relationships.
Serving as the voice of the student body can be a time-consuming job. How would you handle the workload and pressures involved? And I believe Will went first last time, so let's have you start, Eunice.
Wait, Jirashi, he's trying to come back in. Do you want me to admit him?
Oh, yeah. Might as well.
Hey, sorry, I got cut out.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so let's just go back to the last question, and I can repeat it if you want.
Yeah, can you please repeat it?
Some would say one of student council's biggest issues is getting constituents involved. How would you address this issue?
I feel like so far student council does a good job of getting constituents involved, but it could definitely be improved. I feel like there should be more like open sessions for students to come in and out and just bring up ideas that they would like to improve or better, rather than just through email or just certain, I guess, planned events. They should be more open to the public. But for the most part, everything is, it's really easy to contact student council, and they do a good job of responding. But for the most part, everything is in good shape.
Okay, so, sorry, one sec. The next question, let's start with Eunice and then move to Barry and then Will. Okay, one sec, sorry. I was a little thrown off. How many hours a week do you think the current position holder works? And how many hours weekly do you see yourself actively contributing to council?
All right, if I'm being honest, y'all, this thing is no joke, okay? I mean, for this year, I think we have definitely, at least on my team's end, like we have definitely pushed ourselves, you know, beyond our capacities, especially when there are situations that do call for you to, you know, go beyond the typical 9 to 5. And though we have tried to set those boundaries, sometimes it can be difficult, especially when there are unprecedented events that happen, or when the administration sometimes calls on you to, speak on behalf of your students, to come to an emergency meeting. There's so many things that are unexpected when it comes to this position. And I think that, answer the second part of your question, a huge part of that, you really have to sometimes take a step back and be able to constantly be in a state of reflection. And to be able to really succeed in this role, I feel like, you have to rely on those around you to support you. And, when you have a cohesion with the fellow e-board members that you have, as well as the council members, that's really when you can make great things happen for your community. And so it's really about stepping back and relying on folks and being able to delegate out as opposed to taking on everything on your own.
Okay. Sorry, Will, go ahead.
Oh, me. Okay. Yeah, so I feel like obviously council is a huge time commitment. As Eunice was saying, it's very important that we stay connected within the community, and I think this is something that I will hopefully be able to contribute to this role. As a member of the Scarlet cross-country team, Environmental Action Committee, CUPS, CMT, I believe I have a huge, a huge net of people that I can go to help us achieve these big, ambitious goals. The 3 goals I mentioned, but also other very important things. Helping improve mental health on campus, counseling, other priorities that definitely could be improved and should be improved. So I believe that, as Eunice was saying, a good leader is someone that can put in the time, put in the work, someone who's obviously smart, as all of us here are, but also someone that is very connected within the community and someone that can build bridges between different clubs and organizations. And that's something that I really looking forward to hopefully having the ability to do. So thank you very much.
And Bear?
I mean, certainly this position definitely does have a lot of time involved in it, but I honestly feel like if you enjoy the time or what you're doing, the time really doesn't matter to you, especially if you're interacting with your peers and you're honestly working to a goal that helps better their experience, also yours. The time really doesn't matter, although it may accumulate up over a week's day or a week's time. It's certainly worth it, and it's definitely a part of the job, so you pretty much know what you're getting yourself into. Me being a part of the men's basketball team, it definitely taught me how to prioritize time and set alongside time and things that need to be done and things that if you have free time, you definitely can. But with the best of both worlds, like it gives you structure in your life and you get to work on task.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question, let's go Will, Barry, and then Eunice. And then as soon as one person is done talking, the next can start. What types of experiences make you qualified to run for this position, and how do you think your unique perspective will be reflected in your work on council?
Yeah, so I believe when we talk about obviously running for this office, I believe it's not just our ideas, but it's also the person implementing these ideas. So I'm very proud of the experience that I believe qualifies me to have a seat at this table. Obviously, athletics experience running on the men's cross-country team teaches you commitment like any NCAA sport, like Barry was talking about with basketball. Also being a member of the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, and then other projects. Like I was talking about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. We had a week-long power outage during our tech week. And those are the kind of, we need a problem solver who can take on untraditional scenarios and persevere. Because when we're talking about the office and the goals that I've outlined in particular, but also other goals that we have for campus, putting on big events, that's the kind of leadership that I believe we definitely could use right now. And I believe that that helps me, would help me be a leader.
Sorry, it's
So,
been a minute.
yeah.
Sorry,
Can
can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. What types of experiences make you qualified to run for this position, and how do you think your unique perspective will be reflected in your work on council?
I look back into my roles in high school. I was once a mentor to younger children, and that came from the same background as I did. Pretty much children of color, and we basically talked through how to adapt to certain situations and how to go about your day-to-day and how to improve those interactions with people who aren't the same as you. So I definitely think I can bring that towards the table. Also with my experience to Clarkies on campus, whether they're my age or older, I seem to have a good relationship with them, even faculty, and they give me very diverse kind of issues they have, such as teachers when there's students who want to take up their space in the library when they're like trying to get work done. So making it more accessible for students and teachers to work together and not interrupt each other, that's definitely something I could also bring. And I just think my living background, also coming from suburbs, but also New York City, I can definitely help expand Clark into a city that no one wants to leave.
Okay, thank you. And Eunice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, in terms of experience, I'm currently on the Counterpoints, which is an all female Alliance a cappella group, and we sing for 7 hours a week. We're constantly in community, but also it requires you to give honest and open feedback to each other about, the repertoire that you're working on. It dedicates time, but also it teaches you discipline. I've also had experience working this year on the Student Sustainability Fund. So again, on the funding side, about being able to, have honest conversations and be able to deliberate with folks and sometimes ask the difficult questions. And I think especially in my role in student council, across the many roles that I've, had the position to be in, you really have to work in partnership with and understand the mechanisms of power that exist. Who holds power and how can you leverage that so that you can use the collective student voice to advance the interests that Clarkies care about. And as well as having a very justice and solutions oriented approach. I've always held myself to a standard of not only, making sure that others are able to have a seat at the table, but also how do we restructure the table so that people feel like they can be there to begin with. And so I think that all of those really do allow for the unique perspective that I have to be able to advance in this role.
Okay, thank you. For our next question, let's have Barry go first, then Eunice, then Will. And the question is, how will you best represent the interests of the Clark's, wait, I'm so sorry. Okay, how will you best represent the interests of the Clark student body in conjunction with student council?
I feel like you have to hear both parties equally, weigh out what is actually able to get done from both parties and not really side with one another, but try your best and strive your best to, I guess, accommodate both parties and really get things done that will effectively help the community, not just for one particular group, but all groups. Also, I feel like collaborating with individuals who may not be a part of a certain background that you're comfortable with or familiar with, but getting to know outside knowledge is definitely something that would help.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to Eunice.
I think that representing the student body, first and foremost, I think that you have to have a level of boldness and a level of courage that sometimes your ideas are not always going to be fully welcomed, either by your peers or by administrators, and you may very well get rejected or shot down at the first shot. But I think that you have to have a level of persistence and rigor to be able to continue and fight for your seat at the table. And I think we've at least in my experience this year, we've done our best to be able to insert ourselves in conversations that we were not always welcome to, and being able to take part in those conversations and really kind of direct it and leverage your position in that. I think that the student body really needs leaders right now who can move Clark in a direction where, we are bolder about our decisions and we are thinking about the needs, the holistic needs of the community as a whole. So.
Okay, thank you. And Will?
Yeah, so I think representing Clark, the student body, is incredibly important. Obviously, making sure that you can listen is one of the most important jobs of a leader, and it's something that I look forward to hopefully having the chance to doing. But I also think when representing Clark, I think it's really important that we talk about how we can make things easier for not just our students on campus, although that's really important, but also for people who work in dining services. People who work on campus in cleaning dorm rooms and stuff. That stuff's also really important because that's what makes our community run, and that's the backbone of our community. Again, athletics, music, theater, all really important components of our campus that makes us special and makes us who we are as Clarkies. So I look forward to, first and foremost, listening to other people, taking their ideas into account, and being a fresh voice and a fresh perspective.
Okay, thank you guys. We're going to move on to some questions from the public now. Let's start with Eunice, move to Will, and then end with Barry. And the question is, what would you say has been your greatest contribution to the Clark community? So that can be Clark's campus, that can be Worcester, however you want to take that question.
Yeah, thank you. I think my biggest contribution to the Clark community has definitely been the level of energy and passion that I've brought to the various roles that I've been in. And I think that the spirit of collaboration that I've had in those roles has, I believe, not only allowed me to be able to carry out the initiatives that we've been able to push forward over the course of this year, whether that was the menstrual equity initiative or trying to work with dining services and find ways that we could kind of talk about food insecurity on campus. But also, pushing forth equity inclusive initiatives through, the Multicultural and First Generation Student Support Office, or even the Office of Diversity Inclusion. I think that the justice-oriented lens that you bring to, the positions that you're in really does allow you to be able to listen and collaborate well with others. And hopefully through the mentorship positions that I've also been in, I've also inspired other
you.
for that.
Sorry, it's been a minute. Let's move on to Will.
Oh, so the question was, how does,
what would you say has been your greatest contribution to the greater Clark community?
Yeah, so I'd say in terms of contribution, I'd say, I think that obviously me, myself, I don't know if I can say any individual person makes Clark what it is or makes an event run, but I would say that obviously very proud of our contributions that we made. I've helped make within the theater department. From Playfest, from 24-hour Playfest, where we put 6 shows on in 24 hours and got a pretty good crowd. From, again, to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where we had one of the smallest budgets of any production, and we had some of the biggest turnout. And we faced a week full of power outages, and we persevered. We kept in contact with the administration, found new rooms that we could rehearse in. I think that's all what leadership is about. And again, I think leadership is about working with other people. So I don't think I've made one individual contribution that's done everything, but I think I've helped contribute to the bigger picture, which I think is really important.
Okay, thank you. And Barry?
I think I've contributed directly from my athletic team, living example of how to explore all interests and pretty much get what Clark has to offer. Earlier in the season, when we were pretty much stuck directly into just practicing, we had a little break, and I explored on my own what Clark has to offer, and then my teammates then came and joined me. And I feel like if it wasn't for, I guess, me advocating for the theater program, when they have good PPAW events, and also events such as in the dining hall or in the bistro, or such in exact halls, Hughes Hall, we have events in the evening. So if it wasn't for, I guess, people advocating and making people know that there's other things out there except for your common interests, that Clark can definitely be a special place and be a great place to stay.
Okay, for the next question, let's have Will go first, Barry, and then we'll end with you, Eunice. And the question is, what policies would you implement to improve inclusivity for transgender and non-binary students?
So obviously, I think that's really important, because I think we've got to listen to everyone. So I don't know if I can in particular comment on that issue, but I would look forward to listening to everyone within different groups like PRISM, and hopefully just be an advocate and a voice for everybody, because I think that's really important, just making everyone feel welcome. But in terms of a particular policy, I would definitely leave that up to the people in that community, because I think they're best fit to comment on that. So yeah, thank you.
I think we should have, to add back on what I said earlier, more campus events, and these campus events should pretty much advocate for more LGBTQ and diversity in the school as itself. More posters, more media exposure to this community that represents and shares experiences, and just lets the outside community better understand this particular community, and overall it definitely helps the engagement between both.
I feel like this question, especially, it does hit home for me in a lot of ways. And I think in terms of policy, we do have to kind of think holistically about this approach. There are so many different needs that these communities need right now. You know, as somebody who, you know, was one of the organizing founders for the Queer and Trans Students of Color Affinity Space, you know, there are a lot of gaps right now that are needed, especially in terms of mental health and expanding mental health access for those who identify either as trans or non-binary. As well as, you know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, making sure that there is a wider access to all gender bathrooms. Right now, a lot of students expressed feeling unsafe and also feeling like they were not necessarily included in the Clark community in the recent climate action survey. And so I think that a lot of those policies really does have to stem with the partnerships that you build with the administration and continuing to have those conversations constantly with groups.
Okay, so kind of going off of that, what steps would you take to make sure that you hear and represent the entire student body? And let's start with Barry and then end with Will.
Me personally, I feel like as a president, you should be on campus or around campus enough where people can feel comfortable to stop you and generally just ask you any question they feel comfortable with. So being more involved, being around more, being more of a community partner that seems to help everyone out and also be there whenever things are wrong. And just pretty much just having a role or basically a role that shows people that I'm there for them and they can be open to talk to me about anything.
Eunice?
I think in order to really hear and represent the student body, you have to kind of place the onus on yourself and on, you know, the other student leaders around you to be the one to go out and making sure that you are making those points of contact and really taking the time to listen and understand the experiences of the student body. And, you know, I think there is something to be said about being visible, serving as a visible and accessible resource and having open channels of communication that people can feel like they can come to you and talk to you about absolutely any issue that they want, but also that you proactively take the steps needed to be able to go out and speak with constituents on a one-on-one personal kind of level. And I think that, you know, having those touch points in terms of clubs and organizations, but also visiting residence halls, making sure that you are not only using yourself as an individual, but also the channels that you have in terms of representatives and making sure that they're constantly giving updates as to how their constituents.
Okay, thank you. And Will?
Yeah, so I think in terms of being a voice for the student body, I think that we definitely need someone who's involved within Clark's campus deeply, but I think it's also about listening and hearing everyone, you know, from our NCAA sports to our intramural sports, to our theater department, to our environmental sustainability groups, to Black Student Union, PRISM, whatever you call it. And I think one of the great things about Clark is that our identities aren't formed by one thing. You know, you can be a runner, you can be a member of the theater department, you can be a member of the tennis team, of the intramural soccer team. And I love that about Clark. You can get involved in so many different ways. And I think it's really important that we get someone in who understands what it means to be a Clarkie, and who's ready to serve Clarkies.
Okay, thank you. Our last question so the question might be a bit confusing, so let me know if you need any clarification. If there was one question you could ask another candidate, what would it be and why? And let's start with Eunice and end with Barry.
Okay, awesome. So my one question for my fellow candidates, first of all, I just want to applaud you all and commend you for running in this election. You know, I really applaud the fact that you both put yourselves out there and are so ready to serve the Clark community. And as Will and both Barry have touched on, like, we have a, you know, diverse set of students who are on this campus and who are readily involved. So my question would be, what is one community or population that you are not currently familiar or affiliated with, and what would your approach be to getting to know and understanding the needs of that constituent?
Can you like answer that question, or is it just like a question?
Let's just get through everyone's questions first.
Oh, for me, I would basically ask you guys, does the seat of actual presidential matter to you guys, or would you guys rather be just on council and work towards the same goals, or does the seat actually matter to you guys?
Yeah, going off of Barry's question, I'd say to all the candidates, what makes you want to be president in particular compared to the other big roles in council? Obviously, secretary, treasurer, vice president. Yeah.
Okay, so let's have Eunice and Barry answer your question first.
Answer his question?
Mhm.
Okay.
And then let's cap it at 30 seconds this time instead of a minute.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
I can. So what makes you want to be president in particular rather than the other roles for this year, rather than the other roles on e-board or other capacities?
I know president they tend to get most of the fallback or the feedback from when things go wrong, but when things go great, it's pretty much more like community. I want that same thing to be applied as things go wrong, because we are a community working together. And so as far as president, having the responsibility to direct, and I guess if things fall, then it is on you, but as a community, you guys all feel that's where I want to have my mark and, have that responsibility, integrity to lead you guys to success.
And Eunice?
What makes me want to be president in particular, honestly, when I was thinking about running this year and whether I would even run in the first place, because, the executive board, it is a very demanding position to be in. But I have never felt a greater weight of responsibility and a greater calling of a duty to service than I have in this upcoming year. It'll be my senior year, and, the work that you've done on council, like once you step on council, it pulls you in, and that work, you fall in love with it, and you build amazing relationships with people, and you build amazing connections with constituents, and being able to fight for change and to do that at a community level.
Okay, and then Barry, could you repeat your question again?
The question was, does the presidential seat matter to you guys, or let's say if you weren't running for president, would you be running for any other seat, and how does the seat of president affect your position in this campaign?
Will, could you go first, and then Eunice?
Yeah, so I think the role of any member of e-board is extremely important. But one of the reasons I'm running for president is because I want to be a voice for the student body. Our three main policies, those were formed by talking with Clark students, obviously about the bike share from my own personal experience, but also from other students who were hoping to see a cycle of change make a big comeback. But in particular about the presidency, I believe that when one individual person has the power to veto legislation and help pass legislation and also be an advocate for individual Clarkies, I think it's really important that we get someone who's involved in the community. And one of the reasons I'm running is because
I believe time, Will, sorry.
Thank you. Okay.
We move to Eunice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as all of the e-board positions are equally important, and the way that I've seen the e-board positions, you really do have to work as a team. And when you do step into those meetings, it's not about who has what title, it's about what you bring to the table and how your team collectively is going to work to advance the interests of the student body. So in a sense, it does matter, but also it's really about what you do with the position, right? And so how does this affect my position? The reason why the presidency is so vital and important to me personally is because you're also having to represent your constituents in trustee meetings and having to understand where the channels of power.
That's time, Eunice, sorry. Okay, so, we still have your question left. Eunice, could you repeat your question one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So my question was, what communities or constituencies are you not currently familiar with or affiliated on Clark's campus? And what would your approach be to trying to understand those communities better in your role?
Okay, Barry, could you go first, and then we'll move to Will.
Okay. Since stepping on Clark, I've definitely been open to branching off and knowing all the different kind of communities are on Clark. One time I walked into a classroom thinking it was environmental ethics, but it happened to be LGBTQ, and I sort of sat for a little bit and got to know what they were talking about and basically a general idea. And so having that openness to learning anything that comes your way, whether you want to or not, I definitely feel open to.
And Will?
So I think just off the top of my head, a couple really important clubs that I haven't yet got the experience to be a part of. Best Buddies, Prism, so obviously and a herd of other important clubs and groups. But I think in terms of reaching out to them, I think it's important to keep in contact with their leadership. I think it's important to have an accessible page where people can email you and comment to you. And just going off of this, because obviously this is the last question, talking about mental health. I think it's great that we have a mental health toolbox. Yeah, okay.
Okay, let's move to closing remarks. As a reminder, you'll have a minute and a half, and you can use this time to talk about whatever you'd like. Let's start with Eunice, move to Will, and then end with Barry.
Hi, everyone. So I wanted to say again, thank you for having me in this debate. I am so excited to be able to run for your next undergraduate student council president and to really advance the needs of the student body in this upcoming year. Like I said, I have never felt a greater weight of responsibility in this duty. Excuse me. And to be able to serve the student body in this capacity. Over the course of this past year, I've been able to serve on multiple constituencies and several areas of the student government, and to be able to continue this work again in this capacity will mean so much to me. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. So thank you again for your time, and I hope that any interests or any issues that you have, whether it's student council related or not, that you bring these forward. And regardless of the capacity that I'm able to serve in, I want to make sure that I'm serving the student body. So thank you so much for your time, and please vote on March 31st.
Thank you. Will?
Yeah, so I want to take the time to thank the Scarlet, thank for everyone here watching, and also the candidates. We've got a fantastic list of candidates, so I'm sure whoever becomes president, we're going to be able to work and get our shared goals done. And yeah, so I look forward to working to hopefully serve the student body in any capacity. But just touching up on our three main points again. Restarting the Clark Bike Share program, that's a huge goal for us. I've talked to so many students about this. The adding food options to the dining hall. I've talked to a lot of students about this. Zachary Zawilla, who's a big part of food at Clark. And then also hosting a college formal. And I think this one's huge because so many students have been looking for a formal. And I've got all the math on my website. We've talked about funding it through PCFs, but we've also talked about funding it through having a sign-up sheet where the first 300 people can sign up. We can divide that number and get a cumulative total budget of only $33.80 per ticket for that formal. And we would hope to do that at Tuckerman Hill venue. We've got a catering service we were looking at. Obviously open to council's ideas. I was talking to a first-year rep about this the other day, about how we could possibly get these policies implemented. So I'm really excited to hopefully get these things done in any capacity, but please, I look forward to hopefully serving the student body, and yeah.
Thank you, Will. And Barry?
Like everyone, all the candidates, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to participate in this debate. It's been a good experience in my life. It's pretty cool, against my peers. And I wish the best of luck to both of you guys. One of my points that I haven't touched on is about improving Clark's therapy sessions. Having an open discussion with peers can be really challenging, and especially if they don't have the correct training. I feel like we should definitely improve the training so that they get the best experience, and also so that as a whole, like Clark's Clark's therapy experience is for the best. Also, the bistro delivery is definitely something I'm passionate about, and having more campus events, just like what Will mentioned about the formal. I think it's a great idea. We get students more engaged on campus, have something to look forward to, and it'll definitely be an experience that will last with them forever as Clarkies.
Okay, well, I just want to thank you guys so much for coming. I know this isn't how you guys imagined campaigning to your constituents. You didn't imagine we were going to, but thank you guys so much for still making it out here. Your support, it says something that you still came to the debate, that you're still running. But thank you.
Thanks.